Hi, we're back. Me and Betty are
Yes.
here today. We're your certified parent coaches, and today we have another episode for you all about play. We had so much fun on our last episode about play, and we decided to do one more and dive a little bit deeper today. But just to start out, my name is Ellie Knott, and I support parents to become the parent that they've always dreamed of being. We all have these big ideas about how we want things to go when we have kids, and sometimes life gets in the way. And I'm here just to help you get back on track and make parenting be the dream that you wanted it to be. And
Yes.
Betty, will you introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Betty Arteaga Muriel. I am from Your Parenting Story LLC. And what I do is I help parents feel more aligned with the parent that they want to be and rewrite their own story. I'm a believer that we are in this in between space right now where we don't know if what things from our parents we want to take into our current parenting, and also we don't want to be too gentle or too on the other side, and I help parents find that right in between space where you can just be aligned with the parent you want to be. Yes, and then
Oh,
now I want to invite everybody before we start before we start, right? I want to invite everybody to take a deep breath, and it's because today we are going to talk about risky play. And if your first reaction when you hear the word risky play is something like, there's no way, not my kid, and that's way too dangerous. We want you to know that you are exactly the parent that we made this for. Because we get it. Your nervous system is just doing its job. It's sounding the alarm. Your brain is telling you this is irresponsible. They're going to get hurt. Good parents will never allow this. And we hear those voices too. But we're here to let you know that we can build confident, resilient kids if we let them feel a little bit unsteady, if we let them get out of their comfort zone. So this conversation is not about pushing your child off of a deep end. It's about gently expanding your window of what feels safe to you, and we're going to do that together. So today we're starting with a simple question, and Ellie, I'm going to invite you to help me with this one. What is risky play?
yeah. So I'm going to pull from an amazing book called Balanced and Barefoot by Angela Hanscom. And this defines risky play perfectly. Children are natural risk takers. They need it, they crave it. Ellen Sandcedar, a professional of early childhood education at Queen Maud University College, defines risky play as thrilling and exciting forms of play that involve a risk of physical injury. She identifies 6 types of risky play: handling dangerous tools such as knives and hammers, being near dangerous elements such as fire and water, exploring heights by climbing trees and rocks, speed such as skiing down a fast hill, rough and tumble play such as wrestling and play fighting, and playing on one's own.
And I have a quote from there too that it says, if children climb trees on a regular basis, they'll not only develop the muscles and advance the coordination needed to be expert climbers, but they'll likely be confident, strong, and safe in any other physical pursuit.
Yeah. So, Balanced and Barefoot has started us off with this episode with telling us what is risky play. And immediately you might be having some of those fears come up of, this sounds really unsafe. There's no way I would let my child do that. And we are going to address those fears later on in our episode. So I'm going to ask you to just hold those fears, maybe set them aside right now, because I want to tell you a little bit more about the benefits of risky play, because there are so many. They are just endless. Um, Independence is one, right? We all want to grow kids and raise kids who are independent, who can do things on their own. And risky play is a great way for them to start building that independence. Because as they're engaging in these types of play, they're going to be problem solving, right? Things aren't always going to go their way. They might be climbing a tree and they might fall on their first try, right? When they're still low to the ground and they're just trying to get up there, they might fall, and they might fall a few times. They might fall
Mm.
20 times before they finally get up on that first branch, right? And it's going to get their gears turning, and they're going to be thinking, okay, like it didn't work when I held on to this spot of the branch. What if I hold on over here? Oh, what if I use my feet and start climbing my feet up the trunk? Will that help me? And slowly, slowly, they're going to start getting closer and closer to getting on that first branch of the tree. And are they in a ton of danger from falling, just from getting on that first branch? Not really, right? They might get some bumps and bruises. They might get a cut or a scrape,
Mm.
but there's not like a huge, huge physical risk factor here. Um, they're also, while they're doing that, they're engaging those gross motor muscles and those fine motor muscles to figure out, okay, how do I move my body to accomplish the goal? They're practicing their coordination, right? So many skills going on here. Um, they're also going to start to develop their perseverance, right? Because, like I said, it might take them 20 times before they actually get onto that first branch that they wanted to. So, if they try it once and they give up, like they're never going to get there. And maybe they have this sense of perseverance already, or maybe they have someone nearby who's kind of cheering them on. Yeah, try again, try again. I know you can do it. And after they finally do that 20th time and they get to that first branch, they're going to feel this immense sense of pride, right? Of like, oh, I did it, right? I tried, I didn't give up, and I made it. I got to the branch. And they're going to feel elated.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they're also going to start to learn their own limits, right? And listen to their sense of like the inner voice inside of them that tells them, should I push a little more, or is this enough for me right now? Because after they get to that first branch, maybe they're thinking, oh, do I go a little bit higher? Or they are like, no, I'm good right here, right? And they start to listen to that own voice in their head, where as if an adult steps in and doesn't even let them, try to climb the tree at all, they really won't get that experience of being in this situation where they get to call some shots, right? And it's not
Mm-hmm.
it's not an insanely risky thing, right? We're not letting them like climb up a cliff where they're going to fall into a ravine, right? They're on
Yeah.
a tree, they're a few feet above the ground. It's a reasonable risk, right? And obviously, this is going to change depending on the age of the child, depending on their physical development, and what's going on for them. So that's something that each parent has to really assess for themselves, and figure out. We can't tell you what that risk limit is. Um, and so this is just an example for us to dig into some of the benefits.
Yeah,
Um,
and I see that a lot, especially in my kid, for example. I will notice that he takes more risk on his video games. And
mm,
I'm gonna put it in this way. Because when we listen to all of this acts that are defined as risky play, what I hear is this is old school growing up, right? Our parents grew up like this before the internet, before all the games. They were out there with their friends and their family, and actually adults weren't as involved in that kind of play. So they were able to go out on the neighborhood and climb a fence and climb this tree and be out
mm-hmm,
there with people that they trusted, right? And they were able to assess, if he can do it, maybe I can. And those things develop more naturally. In these times, for example, I noticed that my kid can take those risks in a video game because there he feels safe and in control, especially from me, because there I'm not gonna go into his video game and tell him, no, you can't jump to that other side because you're gonna fall down, right? There
mm-hmm,
it's like he is able to explore those limits of risk in the video game, but we're taking that into the outside. We want our kids, and I hear parents all the time, we want them to play out, but
yeah,
we actually meddle a little too much when they're out there. And in the way of, and I know that we were all raised with the be careful, right? Be careful. And we're always, I know I was that type of parents of always. And that is what is making them feel like, oh, okay, I'm not in control here, I'm not safe here. So they're not exploring as much. So this is more of an invitation of, let's explore, let's get curious about what feels safe, what are those, like you said, risking limits that you have as a family, as a
Mm-hmm.
parent, that I can allow my kid to explore a little bit more, to build that confidence and that risk assessment, um, the right capabilities that I want him to have in the future, but in a
Yeah.
space where me as a parent, I also feel safe.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Absolutely. And so we'll get into a little bit more of those. How do we set our kids up for success
Hmm.
in getting a little bit more riskier in their play? Um, and first, I'll share a few more benefits that we have, and these are going to be a little more specific to like a rough and tumble play situation. And the first one is a healthy aggression outlet. We all feel anger, right? It's a very normal emotion. It tends to be one that we try to shove down, we try to turn it into something else. But it's a very normal emotion. If you take the Transformational Parenting Program with either of us, you'll get to spend a whole week learning about anger and aggression. And it's something that is very healthy, very natural. And rough and tumble play is a great way for kids to move that angry energy through their bodies and release it in a way that is healthy in an environment that's safe, rather than it coming out as hitting their sibling out of nowhere or, snatching toys from the baby, right? And those are the things that we really don't want to see. So we're giving them this healthy way to release those feelings, and then as they're doing this, they're going to get to explore their own moral development, right? And so we all have this sense in our heads of like good versus bad, right? Or good versus evil. And we do a lot of talking to our kids about these things like, this is good, this is bad, this is how you're a good person. But that only goes so far, right? Because that's all the head knowledge. And our kids need to embody it. They need to feel it. They need to experience it. They need to build it from the ground up and build their own sense of good and bad, right? So they might be doing this rough and tumble play. And on the surface, it might just look like wrestling to us, right? If we just come in the room, we're like, what are you guys doing? But they may have a whole backstory set up, right? It may be like,
Yeah.
right? And one of them is the good guy, and one of them is the bad guy. And they get to play these roles and understand, okay, how does this play out in a real situation? And, do I want to be the bad guy or do I want to be the good guy? Right. And the only way for them to work through that is to actually do it. And, then we're guiding them through it and helping them land on the good side of things. Um, but sometimes if bad character, if that feels like a very forbidden thing, something that's not allowed, it makes it even more attractive. That like, oh, I want to try that on, right? So when we give them the freedom to try that on and we trust that they're going to come back to the good side, they're just playing right now. It's not actually that serious, right? It's just play. And then they can move through it. Um, then there's a lot of communication and boundaries that are happening in rough and tumble play. So it's not all physical. There also needs to be communication, and some of that might be body language communication, and then some of it is going to be verbal communication. And so for me as a preschool teacher, I have a lot of situations where like I have a class and they want to wrestle, they want to rough and tumble, right? Especially the boys. The girls will do it too, but the boys usually get a lot more into it. And I set up a safe environment for it, right? And so they know to be talking to each other, to be, oh, are you okay? Or if you're getting uncomfortable with something, you need to speak up and say, no, stop. And then we can talk about, okay, do you still want to play this game? Or, was there something you didn't like I didn't like when you hit my shoulder, whatever it is. So we're starting to learn to be able to communicate our wants, our needs, and our boundaries before we go on to practice these things later in life. Um, Again, we want to raise children who, when they grow up and maybe they get their first job, maybe they have a boss who is trying to use their position of power and take advantage of that, right? And try to get your child to do things that are outside of their scope of their job, right? If they've never had practice to be in an uncomfortable situation and be able to stand up for themselves and speak and state their needs, they're probably not going to know how to do that. Where this is that very, very first baby step of we're rough and tumbling. All of a sudden, things get a little too rough for me. And might be like a little bit starting to panic. But wait, I can use my voice. right? And when we're in this play situation, there's going to be an adult nearby to help remind them, oh, wait, use your voice, right? Tell them to stop. When your kid is at their first job and they're, maybe they're a teenager, they're a young adult, you're not going to be there with them to remind them you get to speak up to your boss, right? Or whoever this person is in a position of power. Um,
Yeah,
so,
even with situations in friendships as well,
mm-hmm,
as they grow up in the future, because within play they do feel more comfortable expressing their voice, and like you mentioned, it's a practice. But when it comes to real life, and well, if we're going into maybe a deeper thing, but it's about also learning consent, right?
yeah,
And then we're teaching them that even if you're having fun and to you it's all fun and games, we need to check with the other person too. And
yeah,
you're developing your voice to say stop, but we're also developing that concept of consent. And it doesn't matter if to me I'm feeling happy and playing all of these things, I need to be in accordance with my partner, the one that I'm playing with and I'm doing life with, to be like, hey, are you still with me? Do you still want to keep playing? And when
mm-hmm,
that person says no, then we this is the time where they get to have that frustration out, like, hey, but I want to keep playing, but this person doesn't want to. And this is a safe space for them to explore that frustration of hearing no, I don't want to continue with this game.
mm-hmm,
So I think it's great for, in terms of consent, in terms of bullying, because sometimes bullying happens very unconsciously, in the sense that everybody else is having fun. The only person that's not having fun is the one being bullied, right? We're teaching our kids to observe um, the physical cues, the verbal cues, and to respect those boundaries when it comes to real life, the future. And these are all things that they are going to need. And right now, most of them are only hearing it as a speech, right? When they come adults,
yeah,
you can't bully, you can't do this, you can't do that, you shouldn't. And they're not, but they're not getting the skill. They're getting what they're
mm-hmm,
not supposed to do, but not developing the skills. And this is a way, and this is why it's a good extension from our conversation before about play. When we mentioned we're speaking their language, same thing, we're teaching them the skills in a language that they can understand, and they get to practice it in a safe space for them, where they feel like they can control the outcome, and
mm-hmm,
then get that anger, frustration, all of that out in a way that they can handle.
yeah. And they get it wrong because we're
Hmm.
human. None of us get it right the first time. And especially, right, if we can't get things right the first time as adults when we're learning something new, how can we expect children to get it right the first time? Right? So
Yeah.
these play scenarios, like you said, they're a safe place to make those mistakes, to get it wrong, and then to try again and figure it out and work through it. We don't want our children going into these situations for the first time as middle schoolers, teenagers, kids in college, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
Um,
By that time, they are expected to have the skill. But
mm-hmm,
did we ever ask ourselves, did we provide those skills to them?
yeah,
Mm.
yeah,
Yeah. And then I know that for me, and then we were talking about all of this, the benefits are there. And I believe you that, scientifically, developmentally, it's there. But watching two kids going at it, like actually rough playing, that's the part that I'm like, okay, I get it, but my body is not reacting the way I think. I'm thinking my body is getting all tingly, and I'm getting
mm-hmm,
like hot, behind my ears, and I just want to go and stop them separating, right?
yeah.
How do I work with that?
Yeah, and I'll say I have the same feelings come up where I'm like, oh, my nervous system is really activated watching these kids like just go at it. And I'm also watching their faces, and they're both smiling, they're both laughing, they're having fun, but my nervous system is like, this is not okay. This is not safe. So we're
Mhm.
gonna get into a little bit more about how can we work through these fears so that we can get to the other side and really allow our kids to absorb all the benefits of this type of play without us constantly being on the sidelines feeling like, oh God, danger is imminent.
Mm-hmm. Yes. They're gonna break their heads. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. And so, one way I think that we can do this is, right off the bat, anchoring ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
taking a breath, getting back into our body, and then we can start to do some risk assessment, and look at the situation and think, okay, is it actually dangerous or is it
Mm-hmm.
immediately dangerous? Because our brain spins all these scenarios and is very forward thinking, right? So we might be watching the kid climb a tree, and our brain is going a million miles a minute and thinking, oh my God, they're going to go to that branch, and then they're going to go to that branch, and they're going to be so high, and then they're going to fall, and they're going to bump their head, and they're going to get a concussion, and then we're going to have to go to the hospital, and meanwhile they're only 4 feet off the ground, and your brain
Mm-hmm.
has spun this story, and now you're at the hospital, right? But when we come back into our bodies, we come back into this moment. Okay, my child is 4 feet off the ground. They're on the first branch of the tree. They are safe right now. Even if they fall right here, they'll likely just get a small boo boo, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not a major injury. So let's slow down. And now I can start thinking about, okay, like what skills does my child have, right? Does my child do a lot of climbing? Do they have that strength to hold themselves on that tree? Do they have the presence and the awareness to be looking around, to be judging, okay, is this a really thick branch that is sturdy and strong and can hold my weight, or is this a really tiny skinny branch that's gonna wiggle and is not gonna hold me when I grab onto it? Things like those, and those are skills that we can also start to encourage our kids, which we'll get into a little bit later. I don't want to jump to that just yet. um, but I think a big part of it is really facing those fears, right? Is like, okay, where is my mind going right now? What is this like worst case scenario? And is this likely, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
let's get back to reality. Is this actually going to happen? Most likely not. And again, this is something you have to judge in each situation. Like, you need discernment. You need to figure out what's right for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, there's a lot of fears. I think common fears, like you mentioned, is the fear of injury. Another very common fear for parents is the fear of judgment. If especially if we are in a situation where we are in a play date or something, and there are other parents, right? Or we're in the park and our kid is the one climbing all the way to the top, and the other kids are like, I want to do it too, and you're like, oh my god. They're what they're gonna think, right? And that fear of judgment comes out a lot. I think that one of the questions that I like myself is like, when you do see the risky play, one assessment that you can do within yourself is, where do I feel it in my body? And I
Mm,
mentioned some sensations in the beginning. Some people might get tingly, yeah, you might get hot, you might get uncomfortable. Where do I feel it? And if thoughts are coming with it, like you mentioned, all of those thoughts of, he's gonna jump here, jump there, he's gonna break his neck, all of those things are coming up. It's like, whose voice am I hearing? Do I hear warning me? Because that voice, discerning whose voice that is, it gives us a lot of power. Most of our
mm,
fears come from society and from the way that we were raised. How many
yeah.
times were we told that no, that's very dangerous? Or just the simple expectations that they think, like, parents, good parents have to be vigilant and nothing can happen to their kids. If my kids have a scrape, that's on me. I was not doing my job. So whose voice are you listening to? And assessing, and that will help us, give us a space, that little wave room, a little space, like you mentioned before, to actually assess the situation and
Mm-hmm.
look around and see if they are actually in danger. And you mentioned before when you were talking about your kids that you look at their faces, right? You see, making an assessment of the situation of are they having fun. You can even look at their brain move in their eyes and the intention that they're moving to do something
Mm-hmm.
for you to know if they're actually paying attention to the risk they're taking. And that's something that might calm you down because it is very important that they feel capable, but also that you feel safe, right? So looking at them with a different lens of,
Yeah.
you said, what skills do they have? Does my kid know how to climb, or do they climb a lot, etc.? But just observe them, take a moment to scan yourself and also be very mindful in the moment and observe your kid. Is he looking around to see what it is? Does he
Mm-hmm.
look nervous? Does can you can almost see their next move by the way
Yeah.
they are assessing the situation, and you can take that moment and instead of being in your head, to go down back to the body, feel your all of your these emotions that are coming up, and then ground yourself in the moment and say,
Mm-hmm.
okay, if my job as a parent is to be vigilant, then
Yeah.
let me be vigilant in the sense of I'm looking at you and I'm assessing what is your next move without necessarily jumping in.
Mm-hmm.
Let's look at their faces. Let's look at their movement. Do they do they look like they're taking safety precautions? If that makes you feel better, yeah.
Yeah. And I'll say there's such a distinction between vigilance and hypervigilance. And so hypervigilance is a place we can move to when our nervous system is constantly ramped up, when we're
Mm-hmm.
having a hard time to feel calm, to feel in our body, right? You might be listening to this and be like, what do you even mean to be in your body? You might not understand what we're saying. And if that's you, your nervous system is probably activated all the time and you're stuck in that place. And that's where a coach can help you, is to start calming the nervous system down. And when we do that, we can start to listen to our inner voice more. When our nervous system is ramped up, when we're hypervigilant, we're not actually listening to that like wise inner voice inside of us that knows best. We're listening to fear.
Yes.
And the more that we listen to fear, the more that we hear fear.
Mm-hmm.
When we decide to stop listening to the fear, we can actually start to hear our inner voice again and build more trust in that inner voice, and to trust that that inner voice is going to tell you when something is truly unsafe versus telling stories that every single situation is unsafe.
Yes. Yes, and I know that from the Giant Institute, one of the things that Rebecca Little mentions is that parenting from fear is easier because it's the common thing to do. That's what we're
Mm-hmm.
used to. We're used to parenting from that, but we are this is an invitation to move away from the parenting from fear and move to the parenting from safety. And
Yeah.
we can definitely do that by assessing the situation, and especially looking inwards to ourselves about why is this situation making me feel so anxious when
Mm-hmm.
my kid is doing something very normal, developmentally appropriate with other kids their age as well. Why is this making me so nervous?
Yeah. Yeah. And if you're struggling to do that, again, reach out to a parent coach. They can
Mm-hmm.
hold that space for you. They can help you dig a little deeper, find where that block is, and move through it so that you can enjoy playing with your children. You can enjoy watching them grow, watching them push their comfort zone and learn new skills without feeling that constant just dread and anxiety and fear while you're watching them.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
we're there to listen to them, but to celebrate their independence as well.
mm-hmm. Yeah. So now I want to talk a little bit about how we can encourage children to engage in risky play without making them feel like they're unsafe or making them feel out of proportion, like fear or anxiety as
Hmm.
they're as they're engaging in these types of play.
Yeah, one of the things that I want to say that we are there to support, not to suffocate them, and we want to guide them, but not alarm. We are there, and we are able to beforehand, before we even leave the house, before they engage in this play, we get to start with the skill building. And you mentioned that, Ellie, with your students, where you make it a safe space, right? You have this area where they can play. Same thing goes for when we are out there. Before we leave the house, we can start this process of giving them guidance. And I think we can talk a little bit more about what I like to call like principles of when we are out there with the kids. And the first one will be to use neutral observation language.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I want to bring from a story that you said before is about the branch, right? The first branch. Is it thin? Is it wet? Etc. We can start by, instead of be careful, don't jump in that branch, it's gonna break. We could be like, do you see that branch that's a little, feel it? Does it feel a little wobbly to you? What do you think that means about that branch? How much weight do you think it can support? What does it say about that branch that's different from that other one that you see it that's not wobbly? Or like, I see that that's wet over there. Do you see the wetness? What can we do if that area is wet when we're going through there? And we invite them to do that problem solving in that moment. We invite them to be aware of the little details without setting off that alarm of, I'm gonna fall down because this branch is too wobbly and it's wet.
Yeah. So there you're encouraging that critical thinking, and then you're helping them build, from the inside out, their own inner voice. Where one day you'll be able to trust that they have this inner voice. It's strong. They can hear it and they listen to it.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, so there's a lot of different language you can use. And I think sometimes the hard part can be trying to figure out this language in the moment where your nervous system is starting to ramp up and and you just need to say something because, oh my gosh, they're about to fall. So having some of this language in the back of your head before you're in that moment is really helpful. So I'm going to give a few extra examples. Another one that I will use with kids, especially ones that I know that are really big risk takers and maybe haven't done quite enough of that risk assessment in their playing. They're more of that child who's just like, go, 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 go. And
Yeah.
they're really excited and they just want to dive in. Um, I'll ask them, I'll stop and say, do you think if you fell from this spot, do you think it would be a small boo boo or a big boo boo? And now this
Mm-hmm.
is not a question I would use for every kid. If it was a kid like me when I was young, and I've taught a lot of kids, where they are more reserved, they are more cautious. They're not about to like go to this crazy high spot where they're going to fall from. I'm not going to ask that question because that's probably going to create more anxiety, more caution in them. This is only a question I'm using for those kids who are just like, yeah, let's go, let's go. I'm going to see how high I can go, and I'm just not going to stop, right? And they're not stopping to think. So that's one of the ways I help them, stop and kind of consider the cause and effect, the consequences. What is the possible risk here?
Mm-hmm.
Um, Again, another one of just noticing, oh, I noticed that that log is really wet. That means it might be extra slippery. Let's use our slow feet when you step onto that log.
Mm-hmm.
Um, do you have any other?
No, for me, this one, it's an invitation for parents for curiosity. I think that's one of the ones that I need to practice a little bit more, or I try to consciously practice a little bit more. I have an 8-year-old that is he loves engaging in risky play. Not so much with other kids, like the tumble and ruffling between them, but more in the, I bet I can get all the way to the top in the highest spot in the playground type of way,
Yeah.
or he's jumping around all the time. And it's the guidance in asking them questions, I think, is very powerful,
Mm-hmm.
because you also get a little sense of where their brain is going. Why
Yeah.
are they? I think it's important for us to know as adults, right? We feel the need to know why is he jumping up and down like that. And they can tell you. No, because like you mentioned, the story that they have in their mind.
Mm-hmm.
They giving them the opportunity and asking them questions like, what do you think is gonna happen here? Use your and you create that vocabulary with them. Use your slow feet, right? When you're
Mm-hmm.
coming here, we can, if you see this person is a little younger than you or something like that, we use soft hands, right? Or where, what are the areas that we know we cannot engage, when we're rough playing, and you can say no, no head, no neck, things
Mm-hmm.
like that. And we are creating that vocabulary. We're asking them, we're entering in curiosity and asking them what do they think, what do they observe. But we also get that opportunity to have them tell us their plan. Right, tell us their
Yeah.
plan. What is it that I'm trying to do here? And that helps the parent too, to feel a little more at ease of
Mm-hmm.
the kids vision.
Yeah. And then it can help us kind of identify, okay, where is the missing link for them right now? Like, what is the piece that they're not considering? And that's where we can give those helpful questions or observations to get them thinking. As you were talking about that, I was also thinking about those kids who don't naturally want to take the risks. Maybe they have some of that fear,
Mhm.
some of that reservation inside of them, and they might need help, or they might just get easily frustrated and they might try something, but then they try it once and then that's it, right? They don't want to do it anymore. So they might need a different type of language when they're, they first start to, climb the tree or whatever it is. And they might need kind of more of that encouragement of, oh, this is really hard, but I think you can do it. I see how strong
Mhm.
your muscles are working. I see how you're trying different things. Let's give it another try. Every time you try, you get a little bit closer to being able to do it. Um, I had another one and I forgot, but that's okay.
No, but
Um,
when you said that, I actually thought about a time with my kid where he did climb this big structure that he wanted to do, but then he was so nervous on the way down.
mm-hmm,
That's when he screamed for me, because I was on the sideways, like, okay, breathing in, breathing out, like, you know what you're doing, right? You're doing great, sweetie. All that. And then when it was time to come down, he was freaking out. And it came to a point when I'm like, I am not going to climb up there and
mm-hmm,
come and bring you down. How do I help him come down, right? And that's a point where I had to intervene and be like, okay, let's breathe. Remember, you got up, so there's steps to come down. Kind of like, and then encouraging them in their capability in another sense, because it was like, hey, you were able to get up there. I know that you can come down. You just need to breathe and then think about it. What is the next? I ask him, what is the smaller step that you can take next to start bringing
mm-hmm.
you, and then you can work them through. But it brings we have to let them, if I wouldn't have let him get all the way up, right, we have to kind of let them get into that wobbly spot, and in times that they need us to go in there, yes, we are very, that's why we're there to observe. We are very much able to guide them. But in those moments when he felt like that, I know that that moment could help him in the future after he
Yeah,
does something really difficult. And then for him to do, he's gonna be like, okay, if I slow down and just think about what is the next small step that I can take to do this other thing, what will that be? And
yeah,
translates so beautifully into, like, from play to real life, it
mm-hmm,
translates so beautifully. But it takes us to give them that encouragement and see them, especially for us to really embody the fact that we see them as capable kids.
yeah.
because that's
Yeah.
the trust they're not getting from us. If we are all the time hovering over them, it's like, then if my mom doesn't trust that I'm capable of doing this, then am
Hmm.
I capable of doing this?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And because we all have that moment, right, as we become older and you start to hear yourself and, oh, that's my mom's voice. That's my dad's voice
Yeah,
coming out, right?
yeah,
Or you're hearing
yeah.
their voice in your head. And so, the same way that you've inherited those parts of your parents' voice, how you speak to your child and, the things that you say, that becomes their inner voice. So,
Mm-hmm.
thinking about what do you want their inner voice to be?
Yeah. And from there, it's like my the next principle that I will tell them is engaging curiosity, right? And I think we talk about curiosity a lot in other episodes and in this, and it's that one piece that is missing from most of the things that we're doing, trying to figure things out, is that curiosity of, I'm seeing this situation from my lens. Let me take off my lens and see what else could be out there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then asking them, like, what is your plan? If, like you mentioned, if you fell from here, will it be a big boo boo or a small boo boo? We are inviting you to do that. But while you're doing all of these things, the most important principle that you need to remember is you need to stay regulated and calm yourself.
Yeah.
And I think you can talk us a little bit more, Ellie, on how do I even start to keep myself in check while all of this is happening around me.
Yeah. And so that's something that, right, we don't necessarily have a quick fix for, but it's all of those
Mm,
tools of like taking a breath, of finding, what your grounding practice is that just brings you back to the moment, brings you back to the present, centers you in your body. And that's what a coach can help you with because we work together for 12 weeks. Because it's not
mm,
something that you can fix overnight. It's something that takes time. And so over those 12 weeks, we're able to build, small steps to start just making it a normal practice. Like, this is just something I do. I notice when my nervous system is starting to activate and I do a grounding breath, right?
mm,
Um, but yeah, one thing I did want to share is just kind of some guidelines for parents where, of how to set up that safe environment for risky play, specifically rough and tumble play.
mm,
And, this might be something that your kids, like, maybe they want to do rough and tumble play with dad, or maybe it's at a play date with other kids, and maybe you don't know how the other parent feels about it, right? There could be like a bit of a mismatch there. But and so, as a preschool teacher, I understand that, having all these kids in one spot, but all the parents feel a little bit differently about these types of play.
mm,
And so I want to share the guidelines that I have for the children to make sure that it is safe for everybody, but they still get to engage in this play and get all of the benefits from it. One thing that you said earlier, no head, no neck. We never touch anyone's
mm,
head. We never grab anyone's neck. That's, just not safe. It's not necessary. Um, that's like big number one rule. We're not
mm,
punching, right? We're not making fists. Like, that's going to hurt. We maybe using our hands, grabbing, kind of pushing, shoving, sort of things. And again, right, it's all consent from both parties.
mm,
Um, Listening and watching whoever it is you're playing with, right? We're listening for them to say no. And I'll be standing on the sidelines while this is happening. And if I hear a kid say no, I'm like, oh, did you hear them? Did you hear them? They said no, we need to stop, right? If they don't immediately stop, I'm there to reinforce and make sure that they do stop. Um,
mm,
or if I see a child getting uncomfortable and I can see it on their face, I'm going to say to them, hey, are you still having fun? Right. And giving them that chance, kind of giving them that opening to use their voice, um, which they usually can. Once I give them that little nudge, then they usually are able to find their voice and either, say yes or no.
mm,
And when it does get too rough and we have that moment of like, hey, stop, we don't just walk away. Now we're having a conversation. So when we stop, we have a conversation, and whoever it was that was like, we need to stop. We're gonna say, hey, like, what didn't you like? Did that get too rough for you? Like, go ahead and say,
mm,
tell your friend it was too rough for me. Like, is there something you didn't like? Do you still want to play this game? And they might say, no, I don't want to play. And we find something else to play. They might say, yes, I want to play, but I don't like when you grab my arm. So,
Mm-hmm.
okay, tell them, go ahead and tell them, I want to keep playing, but that was a little too rough and I don't want you to grab my arms anymore. And if the other person is like, okay, then we keep playing. If the other play partner can't respect that boundary, if they immediately start, yanking on their arms again, then we're going to say, oh, no, like we're done. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and that might not even come from me, right? It might be me facilitating, but I might be saying, oh, hey, I remember you just told them you didn't want your arm to be grabbed and they grabbed your arm again. Do you want to keep playing or do we need to stop since your arms are still getting grabbed? And kind of letting that child make that decision of like, yeah, no, I don't want to play this anymore because they're not listening to me. Again, it's fostering consent, boundaries. The other child, if they just weren't able to like have that self-control to stop grabbing arms, but now they see, well, I didn't listen to them, now they don't want to play, and now the game is over, and that stinks. It's letting them live these consequences in real life in a situation that's really there's just not a lot at stake, right? It's a safe
Mm-hmm.
environment. Again, safe environment to make those mistakes and learn. Another rule that I have is no weapons. Obviously, not talking about real weapons, but we're not using sticks. We're not using our play swords or anything like that. No other objects, right? When we're rough and tumble, it's just our bodies, nothing else. Because that's when people can really get hurt, right? If all of a sudden there's like a rock or a stick in the mix, that's going to make it a lot more dangerous. Is there anything else that I'm forgetting? I think those are most of the guidelines that generally keep the play on track, keep everyone safe, keep everyone having fun. And these are things that you could talk about, if it's, a situation where, two friends, they are really wanting to do the rough and tumble on a play date and you're not sure how another parent feels about it, you can talk to them and, maybe, and you can share like, hey, when my kid wants to rough and tumble, these are the rules that we follow. Does this feel all right with you? And I'll if they're rough and tumbling at our house, like I'll always be in the room, I'll be there, kind of as the referee to make sure everyone's all right. Like, does that feel safe for you? And obviously that parent has the choice to make either way.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have anything else to add to that?
No, but I heard, yeah, I heard some very important points that you said, and one of them is that what I hear very loud and clear is that this is not permissive parenting. We are not asking you to all of the sudden let your kid play however rough or risky they want to do, and without you having to intervene. Like the adult is very much the one that is setting the boundaries and the limits
Mm-hmm.
from the rules that we're gonna follow what we play, but and then we are teaching them all of these different skills within those limits and boundaries, that while this is not we are asking you to let go of control in a sense of trying to control how they interact and play, and how they develop within it. You are the adult and you are the one setting those boundaries and limits.
Mm-hmm.
It is an invitation to be curious about the why kids do want to participate in this kind of play, and why it's so beneficial that they still do. But it's also an invitation for you as a parent to know that your values, your boundaries, your rules still go. They
Mm-hmm.
are the ones that we are teaching them through this. This is just a tool for us
Yeah.
to teach those values and boundaries.
Yeah.
But you are very much the one in charge. I think it's important for us to say it in the sense that some parents may think that we are asking them to hands up, do not intervene, or just let them do. That is definitely not the message here. And what I hear Ellie say very clearly is we are setting clear expectations
Mm-hmm.
of what's going to
Always.
happen. And then we let them use their imagination and their capabilities within those very clear expectations. And
Absolutely.
then we get to ask them, like you mentioned, what went well, what do you
Mm-hmm.
like, after what is a good conversation. Is there anything that you didn't like from that play that will teach him for next time?
Yeah.
What will you do differently if you're playing with this person next time? Because maybe in the moment they didn't see it that way and they didn't speak up, but then next time, that game was not one that I would like to play again. I played it, but
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't go back to it. So this is our time also to do that assessment with our kids afterwards of what works for you, because sometimes, especially when we're playing with other kids, maybe they're not the same boundaries or rules when we're playing alone versus when they're playing with the other kids. And it's good for us to know what our kids boundaries are, what do they like and they don't like, so we can help them express them from the beginning. And
Yeah.
yeah, they can rough and play, but here, tell them what are the things that you don't like when you are playing rough, and they can
Mm-hmm.
come forward next time and say, please don't grab my arm when we're playing, because I don't enjoy that. And next time they can come in already with those boundaries in place. So there's so much that we can impart just from us immersing ourselves more into their world, while guide them. The structure is still there.
Absolutely. And so before we kind of wrap it up, I want to challenge everyone with a little perspective shift here, because you
Mhm.
also might be hearing this and thinking, I don't have time to like sit around and supervise my kid climbing a tree, or, watch them while they rough and tumble and make sure everyone's fine. Like, I just want to be able to let them go play by themselves while I can be cooking dinner or, getting some work done. And my challenge to you is to try on this perspective, see how it feels. You are going to spend the time either way. Because if your child is not engaging in these types of risky play, they're probably going to have a harder time regulating their emotions. They're probably going to get hurt more just doing simple things because they don't have the coordination and the physical skill set. And these, like it's we said in the very beginning, children crave risky play and they need it. So it's going to come out in inappropriate situations. It's going to come out in the grocery store when your kid starts running around and trying to get things off a high shelf, right? Or when you're trying to have a nice family dinner out and all of a sudden they're like climbing the booth and trying to get into the next booth, right? So you're going to spend the time either way. Do you want to spend the time having like these situations happening? Not that they'll never happen if your kid does risky play, I'm not saying that, but do you want to have these things happening all the time, and it's just this no, and you're yelling at them and oh my gosh, stop it, why would you do this? Or do you want to take the time to enjoy your child while they're playing, have fun, getting to see how capable they are, getting to see the skills that they're building, and really enjoying it, teaching them to listen to that inner voice? How do you want to spend the time?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And it is to me, this invitation to move forward, right? Right. We are in the process of long-term parenting. We're raising elders. They're gonna be
Mm-hmm.
adults sometime, and not we're not simply raising good kids to do good things, so we're losing our minds all the time.
Yeah.
We are raising, in the now, but planning for that future person that we want them to become or find themselves in the process and become that person that they were
Mm-hmm.
meant to be. So this is the time. This
Yeah.
is definitely the time. Let's embrace it. I think that's a great way for us. Let's embrace risky playing. Let's embrace also, the fact that it is okay to parent from trust. Let's embrace the fact that we can trust our own instincts,
Mm-hmm.
and that way we allow our kids to also develop and trust their instincts.
Yeah. So if you are listening to this and you want to parent from a place of trust, and you want to let go of the fear and all of the fear stories, contact me, contact Betty, and come do the transformational parenting process with us. And we will help you make that shift, go through the journey, and come out of it as a parent who can listen to your inner voice, can help your child build their inner voice, and everyone will just have a lot more joy.
Yes, definitely. And I'm here to help definitely in any the rough play part. I'm going to say that if you have a kid in the early stages, the first few years, I will definitely contact Ellie for those ages because I feel like you understand them. I We talked about it before. You are able to put yourself in the place of the kids and see through their eyes in such a beautiful way that even when we talk, it's like, yes, I can see your vision for the kids. So Ellie, if you have kids that's the stage that they're at, that right now they are experiencing all of those plays, and you want to know what's developmentally appropriate, what should I let them do, how do I find the peace and strength that I need to survive these years, please contact Ellie. Ellie, how can they get in touch with you?
Thank you, Betty. Um, they can find me on my website at Ellie Chase Coaching, ELLIECHASE coaching.com. You can also send me an email, elliechasecoaching@gmail.com. We can set up a free, no pressure curiosity call so we can just talk, get to know each other, and see if parent coaching feels like a good fit for you. And for the parents who want to contact Betty, who are really in that in betweeners place, or maybe they have a teenager, Betty had such a beautiful transformation with her teenage daughter going through this program. How can they find you, Betty?
Yes, I am in social media, Instagram and TikTok is your underscore parenting underscore story. You can also find me on my website, yourparentingstory.com. And there you can schedule a free curiosity call and talk about it. And just if you just want to get to know me a little better, I love to hear people's stories. Like I think that's one of my passions. I wanna listen to all of your stories, and if there is a place where I feel like I'm gonna be of service and value to your life, I will love to work with you. But even before that, let's get to know each other and connect. And like Ellie mentioned, I do try to lean more into the teen life or the parents who are raising the teens, and they engage in a different type of risky play. So if you want to learn more about that as well, we can definitely set up a curiosity call and talk through it.
Yeah, well, thank you for everyone who made it to the very end of our video. And I think we might even have a part 3 of our kind of play series that we've started. So stay tuned for that, and we'll see you next time.
See you next time, guys.